Okay, so like I said, if you had version 1, it should look like this. Focus, focus. If you have version 2, just look for the questions that correspond to each section. You have the exact same questions, they're just in a different order. So yeah, this was meant to be your quiz. I'm just gonna go over it with you guys, just to give you guys some more time to prepare, and then we'll go again. Right, we'll do it again. What? No. Don't worry. Okay, so to solve a compound inequality, they're either going to be and compounds or, right? If we remember, anything with an and is going to have the variable in between. All right, so this is an and because we see the p is in between two values. So and inequalities on a number line are going to be shaded in between 2 points. So whether they're open or closed, right, that's just going to depend on the problem, what you see. But no matter what, your and inequalities are always going to be shaded in between. All right, so let's look at this one. If we have 4 is less than p plus 7 is less than 13, our variable is in the middle. And this is what we want to get by itself. So to get it by itself, we want to do our inverse operations of whatever's in the middle. So let's go ahead, let's subtract 7 everywhere. We're going to subtract 7 everywhere. All right, on the left, negative 7 plus 4, or 4 minus 7, either way, is going to get you negative 3. And then over here, the negative 7 and the plus 7 are going to go away. And then it's going to be less than 13 minus 7 is going to be 6. And now in the middle, our p is by itself. If our p is by itself, we're ready to start graphing. Right? So this is your answer as an inequality. And now you just need to graph it. So to graph this one, find on your number line the negative 3 and the 6. And it's going to be what? Open or closed circles? Open. Open because it is a strict inequality. So open and open. And because it's an and, you're going to shade in between. All right, so some of them are going to be a couple more steps. Right, so something like number 2. Our variable is still in the middle. Right, we have a p right here in between our two inequality symbols. Right, so this is another and, meaning we're going to shade in between. And if our variable is in the middle, this is where we want to do our inverse operations. All right, so it's order of operations backwards. All right, so we're going to do any addition and subtraction first. Let's go ahead and subtract 6 everywhere. Again, you have to subtract 6 from each part of this inequality. 20 minus 6 is going to get you 14. Right, is less than 2p is less than 22 minus 6 is going to get you 16. And now you still have that 2 in front of the p. So you want to divide both sides by, or everything by 2. And then 4 divided by 2 is 7. We have a p in the middle is less than 8. All right, so we have 7 and 8. We're shading in between. These are both strict inequalities, so we're going to have open circles. All right, a very short graph. All right, so looking at number 3, this is an or. How do we know it's an or? We see the word or, right? Not that complicated, right? So if it's an or statement, you're going to solve each of these inequalities, and you're going to graph them. Your final answer should, although not always, but it should be going in both directions, right? So you might have one going this way, and you might have another one going the other way. Again, whether it's open or closed depends on the problem. All right, so let's solve each of these separately. So we have negative 6 plus x is less than negative 12. To get the x by itself, inverse operations. Let's add 6 on both sides. 6 and 6 go away. We get x is less than. 6 minus 12 is going to get you negative 6. So we can start just by graphing that for now. X is less than negative 6. We're going to find negative 6, and it's going to be an open circle. X is less than 6. Anything less than 6 is going to go in this direction. All right, and now we have negative 3x is less than 9. How do we get that x by itself? Divide by what? Negative 3. When you divide by negative 3, what do you have to do to that inequality? Okay, you change directions, right? It's going to become x is greater than negative 3, right? Because you divided by that negative. Negative 3 is going to be between negative 4 and negative 2. So we're going to have an open circle right there, and it's going to go in this direction. All right, and there's your graph. All right, any questions on that?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there was one more compound inequality, right? It was another or. Right, so that means whatever it is, we should expect it to go in both directions. Solve each of them separately. So we get r minus 4 is less than negative 10. So you want to get rid of that negative 4 by adding 4 on both sides. So we get r is less than, should be negative 6. And you can go ahead and graph that. Right, we're going to have an open circle at negative 6. Anything less than negative 6 is going to go in this direction. And now to do negative 8r is less than 24. Divide everything by negative 8. So we get r is greater than negative 3. Why is it greater than? Okay, you flip the sign. Good. You flip the sign when you divide by a negative. So anything greater than negative 3, again, negative 3 is going to be between negative 4 and negative 2. Anything greater is going to go in this direction. So there's your graph, and this is your inequality. Oh, I forgot to write the final answer for this one. It should be x is less than negative 6 or x is greater than negative 3. And then same thing here. R is less than negative 6 or r is greater than negative 3. All right, any questions on the compounds inequalities?
Wait, can you zoom in on that last one? What do you mind?
Okay, so to solve absolute value equations, guys. We always first want to get the absolute value by itself. Is it by itself a number 5? Yeah. Okay, is by itself. So what do we do now that it's by itself?
You just do minus 7 on both sides.
No?
I mean, yeah.
Okay. Okay, but what do we do first?
You just take away the brackets.
Okay, you take away the absolute value and do what? We're going to have a v minus 7 equals 11, right?
Yeah, and then you do plus 7 on both sides.
Okay, we have two equations, guys. There's two of them. We have v minus 7 equals 11. V minus 7 equals negative 11. If we take the absolute value of each of these, we will get positive 11. You need your two equations. Always, always, always. You need your two equations. So to solve one of them, we want to add 7 on both sides. And we get v equals 18. And let's add 7 on this one. And we get v equals negative 4.
Yep.
So we get our two answers. Stop. We also, for this one, want to get the absolute value by itself. Right now, it already is by itself. So all you have to do is write two equations. Right? One of them is going to be a positive 5 equal to a positive 5. So n minus 6 is 5. And then we have n minus 6 equals negative 5. And then we want to solve each of these, and we get two answers. So let's add 6 on both sides. We get n equals 11. Let's add 6 on both sides over here. Negative 5 plus 6 is 1. So we get n equals 11, n equals 1. Okay, so let's try some with a couple more steps. All right, so number 7 is the absolute value by itself. On that side of the equal sign, is it by itself? We're on number 7. No, right? What do you have to do to get it by itself? Ian? Okay, yeah, good. You subtract 7. Thank you. So we get absolute value of v over 3. And then 10 minus 7 is 3. And now your absolute value is by itself. It's the only thing that we have on this side of the equal sign, so we're going to write our two equations. We're going to have v over 3 equals positive 3, and v over 3 equals negative 3. So let's multiply by 3 on both sides, and we should get v equals positive 9. And then you want to multiply both sides by 3, and you get v equals negative 9. So then the next one we want to do something similar, right, is the absolute value by itself on that side of the equal sign. All right, going to be no, right? It's not by itself. What is in front of it that's making it not by itself?
Are we number 8?
Yeah.
Oh, good thing you did this.
Okay, you can treat the absolute value like a set of parentheses, right? If it was parentheses, you couldn't subtract 3. Right? No, you could not. So you don't want to do that here. The first thing you want to do, get rid of this 2 that's in front. Since we're multiplying by 2, let's divide by 2 on both sides. And then the 2's are going to cancel, and we get absolute value of v plus 3 equals 7. And now that we have the absolute value by itself, we write our two equations, v plus 3 equals 7, v plus 3 equals negative 7. And we subtract 3 on both sides for both of these. And then 7 minus 3 is going to get you 4. And then negative 7 minus 3 is going to get you a negative 10. And we get our two answers. All right, now the last 4 questions are on the compounds, on absolute value inequalities. To solve these, we want to graph it the same way, solve them the same way that we would an absolute value equation, right? Only the direction of your inequality is going to tell you where to graph. If we see a less than or equal to, it is an and we want to shade in between. Anytime it's a less than. If it's greater than or equal to, these are going to be or statements, and they're going to go in either direction.
Wait, so it's all shaded in the middle for and?
Always. All right, so let's look at this one. The absolute value is already by itself, and we have a less than. Any less than is going to be an and, so we can expect to shade in the middle for this one. So whatever values we get, we can expect to shade in the middle. And now we want to solve it just like we would an absolute value equation, right? So let's set up our two equations. We're going to have negative 9n equals 45. And we're going to have negative 9n equals negative 45. Divide both sides by negative 9. And 45 divided by negative 9 is negative 5. And then over here, again, divide both sides by negative 9, and we get n equals positive 5. All right, so our two values are going to go, right? We see a negative 5 here and a 5 right here. It is with equality, so we're going to have closed circles. All right, and it is a less than, so we're going to shade in between.
Like, I got the answer, I just didn't know how to, like, put it in. Like, don't you have to do that?
Okay, yeah, so if you get this as your answer, like the graph, your variable, so I'm going to write n, is always going to go in the middle. If it's an and, your bigger one is going to go here, your smaller one is going to go here, and it's always going to go in increasing order. Right, so less than or equal to n, less than or equal to 5. All right, good with that one? Okay, good. So the next one, again, solve it the same way. We see a less than. Again, one way that I showed you guys to remember this, think of it like less than
How come you don't put this out since
or great or than. All right, so anything that's greater is an or, anything that's less than is an and. Okay, so again, this one you're going to solve the same way that you would an equation. We already have the absolute value by itself, so we get x minus 10 equals 19. X minus 10 equals negative 19. All right, so let's add 10 on both sides. So we get x is 29 for one of them. All right, adding 10 over here, negative 19 plus 10 is going to get you a negative 9. All right, so now these are just to tell you where your points on the graph are going to be. All right, negative 9 is going to go somewhere right here. It doesn't have to be precise as long as it's in the general area. And then 29, again, also doesn't have to be precise, just as long as it's a little bit before 30. And this is less than, it's an and, so we're going to shade in between. All right, so this is your solution as a graph. And if it's an and, your variable is going to go in the middle, your biggest one, your smallest one. Right, and it's always going to be less than. And this is your solution as a graph and an inequality. All right, the next one's a question like you were asking. So if there's a negative in front, you need that absolute value by itself before you can start working with it. So to get it by itself, the first thing you would do is divide everything by negative 4. And now that you're dividing by a negative, you still have that inequality here. You're going to flip it. And it's going to become a positive 5 over here, and the absolute value of x plus 5 over here. So this is your inequality, and then it's another less than. So it's another one where you're going to shade in between, right? This is another and. So we're going to get x plus 5 is positive 5, and x plus 5 is negative 5. And then one of our values is going to be 0, right? 5 minus 5 is 0. And our other value is going to be negative 10. Right? It is a strict inequality, so we're going to have open circles at negative 10 and at 0. And it is a less than, so we're going to shade in between. And then to write our answer as an inequality statement, your variable goes in the middle if it's and it's going to be negative 10 less than x less than 0, right? Smallest to biggest. All right. All right, and then there's just one more. Another one where we want the absolute value by itself first before we can do anything to it. Right, we see a 7 plus absolute value of 2b. So let's subtract the 7 on both sides. And then we get the absolute value of 2b is greater than or equal to, what's this going to get you, 16? Okay, now we have the absolute value by itself. Let's go ahead and solve two equations. Solve it as if it was an equation. So we have 2b is 16. We have 2b is negative 16. All right, divide everything by 2. We get one of our points is b equals 8. Divide everything by 2 over here. We get another one is b equals negative 8. All right, so find negative 8 and 8. Because it is with equality, we're going to have closed circles. And this is greater than, great or than. So it's going to go in either direction. Right, so we want to write inequalities for each of these little sections. So for this first one, we have x is less than negative 8. Right, so that's one of them. And then for our other one, we want values of x that are bigger than positive 8. All right, so if we have this, and it's an or statement, to write it together, it's going to be x is less than negative 8, or x is greater than 8.